Thank you for coming to this talk. It's the last talk of the last day. I know what keep you from going home. The title was not that interesting anyway, but so thank you for coming. I really believe titles should be targeted for the audience, and that's why I'm saying that. This title, if I was to give this presentation in the US to a bunch of entrepreneurs since of the crisis, I probably would have picked something like this. But then, I didn't know, if I was to give a talk to students, freshman years, that probably would have been the good title. But then I remember the guys already forced me to pick a title because they printed the publication, so we stuck with big data industry and disease surveillance. And, the words that you pick in titles are actually important, for publishing papers and so on. For example, these are the number of articles published with a certain keyword in the title in the last years. There have been 5,000 articles published with the word Twitter in the title. It's a lot of people talking about Twitter, and there are topics that are rising. Disease surveillance is pretty much always the same. Hadoop, that's a system to calculate a lot of big data, is on the rise. Foursquare is on the rise. Big data is definitely on the rise. Okay, so more and more articles published every day. And how do I know this? Well, I talked to Google Scholar, which it's a product of Google that indexes all the papers and stuff, and I use a programming language that's very simple to do scripts. It's called Python, and I put all those things together. In 20 minutes, I had pretty much the graph that you just see. So big data definitely on the rise in articles. And right now there are 17,000 companies with big data in the description of the company. And just a handful of those raised $80 million in the last 30 days. So for this remaining student here, I don't know what you have going on in the next 4 weeks, but big data is probably a good thing to think about. And so how I did that, I took Crunchbase, that's another website with information on a lot of companies, wrote some code with another language called Perl, and again, half hour, I had my statistics. And that's pretty much what I do in life. I like to take a lot of data and put them together, analyze them, and all the stuff. And when I don't get distracted too much, that's what I generally do. I did that for my PhD, at Iowa, and I did that during my work. I worked at Ask.com, where we indexed a lot of pages. One Riot, we were indexing social media and seeing what people were saying on Twitter and capturing which URL they were sharing. Immersive Lab was a digital advertising company. We put webcam in digital billboards to target the advertising. And then Achievement, my latest company, is a health reward platform, so I get to play with a lot of data. Because data is everywhere right now. There is so much data, many more data we are producing. And all the talks show that we are overwhelmed by data. Everybody produces data, even when you don't know it. I'm going to give some examples of that. For example, and now I'm just at slide 10, I can see a few people that are already looking at their phone. And that's okay. I assume some of you are talking about how great is my talk and saying that on Twitter. Thank you. The other half, you're probably checking your Facebook, your news, your email, and you are forgiven as well because you're about to help me prove my point. A creepy experiment I always do at the conferences, I'm able to put my computer in something that's called promiscuous mode. And this promiscuous mode in my computer allows me to listen to all the communication on the wireless network that I'm connected to. I don't see what people do, I just see what people do. I see the amount of data and how many computers or devices are connected. And so I generally tend to do that in conferences, and I did that for session 12 of Phil. And I established some minimum threshold, and I tried to calculate how many users were on the network while people were giving talks. And I like to speculate that more people will be on checking the internet and the email if the talk was boring. So those are the statistics from yesterday. A few talks were good, a few talks less good, and that's a creepy experiment that I like to do for conferences. And this shows you that even when you don't know you are producing data, you actually are. Here's another example. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Google Maps. Google Maps, you type where you want to go, and it shows you. What Google Maps is very good at is showing traffic. The red and yellow and green lines shows traffic. And it's impressive because not even the transportation departments generally have these traffic details, so you wonder how Google does it. And the way they do it is because everybody uses Google Maps in their mobile phone. And when you do that, the mobile phone apps sends back to Google your location, at different points of time, so they can calculate how fast you're going on the roads. And they do statistics on that, and they figure when there is traffic, when you're going fast, if everybody's going fast, that's okay, and so on. Another piece of data that generally you don't know you're producing, but you are. Another example, this is hard disk. There is one of those in every computer and device. That's where you save your information, your documents, your pictures, your song, and everything. Hard drives are in computers, and then at some point computers became smaller and smaller and smaller, and became laptops, and smaller and smaller and smaller, and people started bringing those laptops in a lot of different places, more and more and more. And bringing stuff to like a lot of different places, carrying it always with you, led to laptops folding, laptop breakings. And when a laptop breaks, you're not upset because of the laptop, because that's not so cute. What you're upset about is that you lose your data in your hard drive. And so the people of the hard drive, they say, we should find a solution for that. And they put little sensors in the hard drives called accelerometers. And when the hard drive knows that it's folding, it does something to prevent the data to be lost. So in every computer, there are those little accelerometers in every hard drives. And little accelerometers, lots of computers everywhere. We all have computers, server, mainframe. So people from Stanford thought, oh wow, can we use those to detect vibrations? And so they invented this thing that's called the Quake Catcher Network, which detects little vibration. If all the computers of Vienna today detects a little vibration, maybe there is something going on. And so that was a very smart idea. We all have computers. We did not know that we had seismographer inside those computers. So data is valuable. Okay, it's everywhere and it's very valuable. The first people to figure out that were phone companies and credit card companies. They've been accumulating lots of data way before people thought about big data and what that was. Like if you think about AT&T or Bell Labs, they had every phone call from everybody since the beginning. And so they knew your best friends, and then the cell phone came along, and so they knew where you were going and where you were, what you were doing. And credit card companies, even more, they know where you like to eat, where you like to shop, what you like to eat, where you go. So those have like very, very huge amount of data, and their data is super valuable. They use them for fraud detection, they use them for a lot of different reasons. But big data are important for a lot of people. Right now, 73% of the stock trades on the NASDAQ are done by algorithms. And those algorithms look at stuff like Twitter, look at the weather, look at blog posts, look at all those things to make sense of those data and recommend to the analyst what to do, if to buy or to sell, or they do that by yourself. Data are important for health. Like for example, there is a company, an insurance company in the US called Oxford Health. If you connect your Foursquare account to your account on oxfordhealth.com, they give you back some amount of money every year because they can check if you go to the gym and your habits and your health habits, and so that's valuable information for them. Progressive is an insurance company for cars in the US. Well, if you install a device in your car, then they give you discounts because in that way they can monitor your driving habits. If you go to speed, something like this. Other companies, however, are not that outgoing on the data side. This is the biggest lie on the internet. I'm sure everybody accepted at least one of those without reading the terms of service, and that's a bad practice because there are people like me out there. And the reason why that's a bad practice is because, for example, one day I was at dinner with a friend. And I was thinking, wow, men keep their cell phones in their pockets all the time. Women have purses, but men generally keep it in the pocket. And there are, the new cell phones, because of the battery that may explode, they have thermometers inside them. And so, I'm not a doctor. I just gather data and try to see if there is something fun in them. And so I thought, geez, it would be so fun if I could figure out a way to measure the temperature of the leg of people. And this friend of mine, I have a little company that produces video games. I promise I will not say what the video game is. But after many, many dinners, I convinced him to put this code in one of his games. And so now there is a game out there that if you leave it open and you put your phone in your pocket, the phone captures it and starts measuring the temperature of your leg. And it's totally legal because we changed the term of service that nobody agreed. This is pretty much how it goes. Number one, it's free, but one day we can decide to make you pay, and that's cool. Number two, if the phone explodes, it's not our fault. And number 3, by the way, we may take your blood temperature once in a while. And it's totally legal, so read the terms of service. People do many, many worse things in your thing. People sell data. There are some companies, they don't do anything wrong, but they are less upfront on what they do. For example, Google. Google gathers a lot of data about everybody. If you think about it, everybody has a Gmail account. 500 million accounts, and the cost of a Gmail account is about $5 for them. So that's $2.5 billion that they're giving free to people for Gmail's account. That's very nice of them, but a little suspicious why they do that. And then they have so many other free products, like here at the Hilton we pay $25 for 1 day of internet. And Google gives it for free on flights during Christmas times. And then they invented the browser. That's the fastest browser out there right now. And then right now they installed free Wi-Fi in the Chelsea neighborhood of New York City. And they have Google Analytics, which you can use on your website to see how many people go there and so on. So why do they do all this? Well, the reason they do all this is because all those systems allows them to get a snapshot of the traffic of the internet. So they see which pages people are going to. And that's very important because before the ranking of Google was mostly based on links. But now a lot of it is based on the traffic that those pages get. Because the internet is so big and there are so many new pages that you cannot possibly crawl them all at the same time, calculate everything so fast and so on. But if a lot of people right now are going to this particular page of CNN, that may be very hard. Because people discover it, because people email to each other and all this stuff. And and then Google, 94% of advertising, Google revenue comes from advertising. And again, if they can track you on the various websites, they can figure out what you like and show you relevant advertisements. Those advertisements are done in such a way that when they load on the page, they actually tell Google, look, Alessio is on this page and now is watching these advertisements. So Google really knows every URL I go to because those advertisements are everywhere. And I was saying before, all these other methods allows them to remain the best search engine because they see the traffic, and that's very huge for them. Nobody can actually get so many traffic information. And don't think that Facebook is better. Facebook has 1 billion active users, and they get 800 million posts per day, and people put pictures, people put notes, people put a lot of stuff on Facebook, and space actually costs money. And so how they do that? Well, again, the advertisements, and then they put this like button everywhere on the web, and 80% of the people browse the web without logging out of Facebook, so they know where you go on every website, because every time that the button loads, regardless of the fact that you click I like it or not on any page, they know that you've been on that page, and this gives them information that then they use for advertisements, and they earn money out of it. If you want to do something similar in your department, you can ask your your friendly IT people to give you the logs from the proxy service. The proxy service is generally a computer that stays between your network and the internet. And every communication goes through the proxy service and generally prevents people from watching porn at work. But the proxy service has the logs of every pages that everybody visited. They kind of look like this. There is some computer at some time looked at some website. This is an extract from a log from the University of Iowa, right? We assume this is a guy and woke up on Sunday morning and watched some football, logged on Facebook, then noticed something weird down there, and started figuring out, okay, geez, what do I have? And apparently that looked like herpes, and then looks at pictures, got more worried, and found a dermatologist in Iowa City. And you can do the same thing, it's so fun. Another thing you can do, if you have a wireless network at your university, department, or whatever, there are all different routers everywhere. And when you connect your computer or your cell phone to the wireless, you connect to the closest one. So if you monitor, with cell phones, right? Cell phones are connected to the wireless now. If you monitor all the points in which my cell phone connected, you can see how people move through your campus, through your, company and so on. That's another thing you can do. You have the data already, and now you can see the flow of people in the city. Like Iowa City, we have the wireless on the entire town. So if you do that, you can see how people move across the town. Those were like ways for companies to get data, but a lot of time people actually volunteer those data. People publish the data somewhere in some form. They are user generated. For example, like Google Flu, Mark spoke about that yesterday. Google Flu looks at the queries that people perform on Google and tries to determine, it correlates them with influenza. Like Google Flu, like this year, everybody was a big thing, came up with an article on Nature, and the reason was because Google Flu predicted an outbreak of flu way above 2009. And that didn't happen, so everybody was a little upset, and they're tuning the algorithm and so on. And the reason why that happened is because when you search for something, they don't know the intention. So what happened is that in January and December, people were freaking out about a new flu epidemic, so everybody was looking for vaccines and flu and stuff on Google search, and likely that made a spike of make people believe that those people were actually sick when they were just looking for information and so on. And that's why, like in 2009, we started exploring Twitter. Because Twitter, you know the intention of people, you know what those people are saying and why. There's a little bit more context than just flu remedies. Because maybe you're looking there for yourself, maybe for a kid. In Twitter, there are actually conversations. You have to remove those awesome Viagra ads. You have to remove like stuff that don't matter. And you have to remove stuff in which people say to be sick of their job, but they are not actually physically sick, they're sick of their job. But then what you are left with are actually conversations of people saying that they are sick, and telling you sometimes the symptoms, and that they are coughing, and how they are feeling, and how long it lasts. And that's powerful information. And that's what we did in 2009 when there was H1N1, and we took all those posts on Twitter and stuff, and we tried to predict ILI. And the prediction pretty much worked, and it was close enough to the report, and we were in advance, like Google Flu, and so that was a good result. But Twitter now is famous. 5,000 people talk about Twitter. You guys know about Twitter. So moving on to something else, in the last years, Foursquare is a new thing. Foursquare is an application that's on your phone and allows you to check in places. So you go to the doctor and people check in just to say like, I'm here. And people go to the gym and check in, say, I'm here. People go to restaurants, say, I'm here. And this application originally was thought so that your friends will know where you are and they could come and bother you there. And, when you check in, if you check in enough times, you get those badges. Badges are super cool and they work great with the ladies, so you want a lot of them. And if you get to a lot of bars, you get the drunken badge. If you are multiple times at the same place, you get mayor, pizza, and gym rat if you go to the gym and all the stuff. Badges offer you small discounts at places. That's why you want badges besides the ladies. So you have all those badges, and some people decide to publish on Foursquare.com for everybody to see where they are. And so I went there, and I crawled and I indexed a lot of those people, and I put them together, and if you see those lines, every color is one different person, and they are the check-ins. So I see how they are moving in New York. You can see that the red guy went from the lower right side, to all different places of New York, and there are multiple people. And if you do this to a large enough scale, you can see how people move in towns. Okay. You can also abstract that, and you can see how people move in the US. It's so hard to find airplane and flight information right now. It costs a lot of money. So if you do this, you can have those information for free, or a good approximation of those. But that's not only what people publish on Twitter. People publish on Twitter almost everything. Every app automatically puts on Twitter, if you measure your pressure, you measure your pressures, if you run and all the stuff. So there is much, much more you can do. For example, see here, I have examples of tweets of people saying how much they weigh, how much they run, and their fat percentage, I believe. And so what they did, I calculated, put on the map the average length of runs of people. Where it's red, people go for very, very long runs. Where it's like whiter, people go for shorter runs. So apparently people in Massachusetts and New York and California are the people who goes for the longest run. It was like on average 7 kilometers, 7 miles. And like people in Colorado right now it's cold, or in Iowa it's very cold, probably don't like to go for runs outside. I also did that for the weight. I took the weight of people and I calculated the statistics. Where it's very, very red means people are like very, very fat, and where it's when it's like lighter means people are lighter. And lately I've been doing something much more convoluted. So thanks to my new company, I have access to a lot of data from a lot of sources for a lot of people. So for the same person, for example, this is a guy, I had the Foursquare check-ins, the Twitter the tweets, and the Runkeeper is a killer. You know, when you go for a run, it tracks how much you run. And I put them all together, and if you see this, you know, the guy, you know, checks in Foursquare. Each bar is a day of the week. As they start with Monday, so the guy checks on Foursquare more often during the last part of the week, Saturday, Sunday. He tweets mostly in the middle of the week, and you know, pretty much goes every day for a 10-kilometer run, something like this. If you look, what's interesting is week number 3, where the guy didn't go to so many places, didn't check in so many places, tweeted a little bit less, and didn't go for runs. And it turns out that if you go look at the tweets, the guy was actually sick. So now we are going from monitoring the population through queries or tweets to monitoring the single people. I can see I can create models that say, oh, this guy probably is sick. So now we can see the single people, not just overall there are 5% of people that are sick. And there are so many new devices now. I showed you how you get data from stuff that there are out there, like Twitter and Foursquare and so on. But there are so many new devices, that you have to bring with you and carry all the stuff. And all those devices then tweet how you feel. And I have all of them. Thanks to the new company I have, they send me all of them. I try all of them. I wake up and I step on my Whiting scale, which calculates my body fat and stuff and puts that on the internet. And these are statistics. It's funny, I just realized every time I give the talk similar to this, I show my statistics and people can see, oh, you're getting fat, or oh, you're losing weight. I'm doing good, I'm losing weight. And you can see that on my Twitter stream. So, and then I step out of the bed and I wear my Fitbit. That's a pedometer. It calculates how many steps I do every day. And again, puts that on the internet for everybody to see. And then, I have this thing that I held, the pressure monitor. You put it on your arm, you measure your pressures and tweet about it. And then, at night, I go to sleep with this thing. It's a Zero sleep trainer. This goes super well with ladies. It was made for people that are either married or single, because there's no way you can date somebody with that thing. So anyway, I do that. So you should see my day. It's like every day I put on gadgets and stuff. It's very complicated. It's getting complicated. But there are new devices, but do we need new devices? We have those phones that are amazing. There are little labs in those phones. Phones have altimeter and pressure monitors and barometers and temperature monitor and sensors and accelerometers. They have so many things. They have cameras and stuff. And people are using those. There are a lot of apps already, a lot of medical apps that allow people to do stuff that before required some equipment. For example, those are 2 apps to check your heart rate. Cardio, you just look at that and it measures the little movements of blood vessels in your face and calculates the heart rate. And instant heart monitor, you put your finger on the camera and uses the flash, you calculate your heart rate that way. It kind of works. And it's funny because people who never measure their heart rate, when they get into those apps, they measure their heart rate once a day, just because they have an app. Because apparently now it's much easier. All the stuff that people are doing with apps, the importance of apps is not that they allow you to do something that before was not possible, but they make it so much more convenient for people to do because they have the cell phone, they are waiting, they're doing something, that they tend to use that. They tend to report more data, they tend to calculate their heart monitor and their heart rate and so on. And there are many, many apps for a lot of things. There are apps that allows you to track your calories. And we have a study at the University of Iowa that we are doing. We are seeing if giving those apps to people on diet actually helps them. We are giving them normal recommendation, and then normal recommendation plus some apps, and then normal recommendation apps, and then some devices so they prove that they are walking and they are doing stuff. And we are trying to see if that help. Will that help? There are running partners. You, for example, Map My Run or Runkeeper, all the stuff. When you run, they measure how much you run. There are, if you have gluten allergy. You're allergic to gluten, there are applications for recipes that allow you to discover recipes you can eat. And there are addiction management applications that allow you to, they help you to stop, to quit smoking on some other addictions. But there are also devices you can attach to your phone and do things. Like this guy, this is from the MIT, the Media Lab, they invented this thing that costs about $1, and you put it on your phone and allows you to do an eye exam and figure out how much eyesight you are missing. And it's $1, it's pretty cool. And they're experimenting right now. And then you have this glucodoc. You attach this thing to their phone, and there's, you can prick your finger, and it apparently is way less painful. And people who give this to actually use it more, because it becomes a game. Oh, let's see how much I have, instead of doing weird things. And they pick it, and on the phone appears, and they graph it, and they are happier. And that costs $60 or something like this. And then there is like application like spot check. Often people don't check their moles often enough, but they have this. There's the application. You take a picture of your mole, and for like 99 cents, you send it to a dermatologist, which looks at it and tells you what things, and sends you to a real doctor, or it's probably nothing to worry about. And all those things, all those apps, and people using them, gives us new diagnostic paths. Like before it was the doctor and that was the only way, but now we have so much data from people. We have the heart rate and all those things. Can we do something about it? And there are all these new media. For example, you probably read the article about this woman and this guy. And the guy got worried because the wife was sending him texts that didn't make sense repeatedly. The guy was trying to have a conversation, and she was replying with weird texts, so he actually called the 911 and sent the thing, and it turned out that the lady had a stroke, and she didn't know, and she couldn't really help, and she was confused. And then you probably read, or for example, we can check the interaction that people would have with those devices. Like, you can check my mouse movements, or how I scroll my iPad, or how I touch my phone, and figure out if there is some change in my behavior, change in my partner, and detect cognitive impairments thanks to those movements. Or for example, they did a study at the Missouri University, and apparently the way you use Facebook tells something about your mental health issues. So we can do something there as well. I'm totally fine with giving you guys access to my Facebook data if you tell me I'm crazy. It's okay. So what you will see happen, if you've never heard of the word API or the word OAuth, you should read about it. These are ways to give apps access to your data on some particular service for a limited amount of time to some data. For example, if you have an app, I can decide to give you access to my Twitter stream so that you can see my tweets, but you cannot tweet, and that for like a month time. Or OpenTable is a website where you can book a table in restaurants. I can give you access to see where I've been dining in the last weeks. And all those things have APIs, and you can connect to them. And so probably what will happen, what I hope will happen, is that we'll start to mesh all these things together to have a better picture of my overall health. Not just my blood test, but if today I went for a run of 10 miles or 10 kilometers, and tonight I'm keeping my reservation at these restaurants, and my heart rate looks fine, I'm probably not sick. Okay? Or at least you can make some inference of that thing. On the other hand, if my phone says that I spent the entire day at home, and Netflix says that I watched a lot of movies and I didn't do anything, maybe I'm sick. There is so much Fitbit, how many steps you took, there is so much things you can connect, and I hope that that's what we are going to use in the future to diagnose me, as opposed to just my doctor visit or waiting for the patient to use yet another app and introduce data in this app. Like, what would be very nice if you gather data and then you say, well, Alessio, are you sick today? How do you feel? And it has to be proactive in that way. So that concludes my talk. My name is Alessio Signorini. I work in the computational epidemiology group at the University of Iowa. A lot of you know Phil Polgren, and so you can go to him if you cannot find me. I'm easy to find on the internet. That's my email and my Twitter. And if you have questions or you want to discuss stuff with me, please feel free to contact me. I always love fun projects to work on. Right. Thank you for staying.
Alessio, we have a few minutes. Are you open to questions now?
No.
It's in your contract. You agreed to it. Sign the terms of service.